And that's the time that the LRA actually slaughtered human beings and made people to eat. That's when they cooked people in one of the villages. So it was people, everybody, my friends rejected me. Even my family thought I was crazy.
To walk into that danger.
And no NGOs were in there at that time.
Yeah, most of international NGOs had to go away because of insecurity. So when I traveled to Padé and we started a fellowship with a group of girls, about 40, who didn't have anywhere to go. Nobody wanted them. We didn't have a shelter, but we were under a big tree with just one Bible. And what we would do, we just share the word in the Bible. And just praising and worshiping God. And our verse, the strongest verse that kept all of us going was Jeremiah 29, verse 11 to 14. It was the strongest message for all the girls.
Where God says, I know the plans I have for you.
Exactly.
Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future.
And look at this now, 7 years later, you've seen how God's taken you from that tree to this training center. Do you ever look back and just in amazement?
It's not just taking us from that tree to the training center. What we are now doing is most girls who did not have the opportunity to come and join us in the training center. Now, some of these girls, they're orphans, and their parents died leaving maybe about 6 or 7 siblings. And when they come back from the LRA captivity, they take responsibility of caring for these orphans. Therefore, we cannot remove them out from the community and bring them to the training center. So we have gone into the village to support these girls from the village, help them, you know, put something to do like agriculture, livelihood, you know, giving them some grant to start a small business. And we do that through the churches at the community. Within the churches in Africa, and I think maybe you correct me whether I'm wrong, in Canada even, but in Africa, women are very committed in helping to build the nations. And these women, we call them seeds of love, just to give out what they have, because they really totally, they are widows, they've seen their children being abducted, they've seen their children being killed before them, but they still stood up to say, we need to do something for these girls, that God has helped them to come back. So we work with a network of women from different churches to help and rebuild our nations, and especially these girls, because we strongly believe that when we invest in this girl, we are going to invest in the all nations, and they will be the one to transform and restore what has been lost in the district.
And Dave, that word's key. Alice said invest. This isn't just a handout. This is an investment in courageous people who are already committed at work and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the personal stories and the journeys that Pastor Charles and Alice have gone through, we haven't talked too much about them, but they have been hard places, hard journeys, hard paths that as Alice and I have talked about, but it's prepared them for a hard time right now where they need to come alongside families that have lived in fear in IDP camps and really need hope. And that's why we want people to phone in and invest this Christmas season in some families that are struggling, but there's hope for them. If we could come alongside, there's a lot of hope.
And why did you partner with Alice?
You know, it was just a God appointment. It was one of those things where we knew about Pastor Charles and we're going to visit him. We had worked with Food for the Hungry Canada in Kitgum, getting a medical clinic going, and Janet, who's been in our program, told Reynold and Kathy, listen, you've got to meet Alice while you're here. And so it was one of those God appointments that he puts together, and we're just privileged to, honored to work alongside both these ministries.
And it was just a right time, because Crossroads were the first Christian organization that Christian Counseling Fellowship got to partnership. And that has been my prayer, that God, I need a Christian partner that will really understand what we are going through. Because it's not all about giving out materials, but giving out love to these kids, giving out the word of Christ, and knowing that Jesus Christ is the center of their healing. And that was my prayer, that God, and thank God that Crossroads were the first Christian partners that came in contact in CCF.
And I love the fact that in Denise's reports, she highlighted the fact that you enable, or you bring up these young people to want to help themselves. I mean, you use the young men to build the homes, you use the young women. And so it's all about bringing hope to these young people and telling them you have a job and you have a purpose. It's not just about reaching out your hand, but it's also about helping your community.
I think we're going to see a taste of
Yeah,
that.
Are we?
we'll be meeting some incredible girls coming up.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important because for the last 20 years, most of these children were born in the camp. And on top of being born in the internally displaced camp, now internally displaced camp is like people were collected from the village and brought in a protected camp where you are not allowed to go like 5 kilometers away from the camp, otherwise the rebel would shoot you or they will abduct you. So most of these children were brought in a concentrated camp.
And they grew up there.
They grew up there. They didn't know what life was. They didn't know anything, no skills. And they were subjected to torture. And they were
in the camps.
In the camps by the rebels, because the rebel can penetrate the camp, and they were taken, and you know, all were really wasted. So when the situation got better, we told them, look, this is the thing we got to do, because we have grandparents here, we have our other youth who are vulnerable and they need our help, and we got them into helping, doing the community service, helping the community stand on their own, because they have the energy. We really have to make them get to know that they have to do something.
And seeing where these people live, these IDP camps. Camp is kind of a misnomer. I don't really think that this is not like any camping experience, certainly if any of us have ever had. I think that was what was so shocking for me. That's really when it hit home to me, the need. When you walk in these camps and you see girls in tattered, filthy dresses, ripped, you know, just wearing literally rags, and kids running around naked because their parents don't have a change of clothes for them to wear. And just the despair, and I mean, imagine growing up in an environment like that for your whole childhood, and now having the opportunity to leave, but not being able to leave because you don't have the ability you don't have the strength to build a house. So that's one of the things that we're asking for, is for people to join alongside and to not only ensure that these people's basic needs are being met, but that they do have this future, they do have this hope. And that means going back into the community, rebuilding these community structures that have just been torn apart in these camps, in the despair of these camps, and in the fear of the climate of fear of living, you know, never knowing when the soldiers are going to come in, or never knowing if you're safe or not. And I think there's just such an opportunity to rebuild, and I think so much of that starts in the young people.